أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Night number 19. Tomorrow inshallah will be the 20th night, the end of the second third of the month, and on Friday evening would be the beginning of the 21st, the odd night. So may Allah grant us all the strength and the ability to achieve Laylatul Qadr. Ameen. We continue with our series Mercy to the World. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as we said, after the Battle of Uhud, had a few expeditions outside of Medina. And the reason for that was the Arab tribes that were living in the vicinity were beginning to have ideas of attacking the Muslims because they were in a weak position. One of the tribes that was between Mecca and Medina was a tribe called the Bani Mustalik. Right? They were called the Banu Mustalik. And they had allied with the Quraysh. And so, because they were also impacted by the caravan routes being cut off, they were enjoying the Quraysh's caravans. They were contemplating invading Medina. The chief Al-Harith, the chief of the Banu Mustalik, Al-Harith, he was recruiting an army to invade Medina. And we've said this many times, the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was very strategic in that he had a very sophisticated, we could call it a spy network. Sahaba all around picking up the movements, what's happening with the different tribes. And so when he got the report that the Banu Mustalik are mobilizing, he sends a Sahabi called Buraidah, go and sign up to the army and see if this is really happening. So when Buraidah went there and he spoke to Al-Harith, and Al-Harith said, yes, we're looking for men and fighters, I'm a mercenary. And so Buraidah said, well, this is categorical, it's very, very clear that an army is in the making. And immediately the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was very quick in mobilizing his own army, and he surprise attacks the Banu Mustalik. He catches them completely off guard, and basically without any fighting, the Banu Mustalik surrenders. Many of the men who could flee, including the chief, he fled. In fact, the battle of the Banu Mustalik, there wasn't much that happened. What really happens that is interesting are three events after the battle. So after the battle, the entire tribe, those who remained, was taken captive. The men, women and children were taken captive. And as we mentioned in Badr and Uhud, in Badr, the prisoners of war are ransomed off. One of those prisoners is a lady by the name of Juwayriyah. Juwayriyah, the daughter of Al-Harith, the chieftain's daughter. Juwayriyah, she was taken as prisoner by a Sahabi. And the two of them agreed on a price to ransom her off, and it was a big amount. And she, of course, was not going to stay as a slave, so she agreed to the price, but she didn't have the money. And so immediately she goes to the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, hearing of his nobility, hearing of his honesty, that look, help me out, cut me some slack, let's work on something. And so she goes to the house of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and Aisha narrates in the first person, she says that Juwayriyah was a sweet, lovely girl. She was a beautiful, lovely, sweet girl, and whoever saw her would be attracted to her goodness and her beauty. I hated her the minute I saw her. And when Juwayriyah wanted to meet the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Aisha reluctantly said, okay, I knew he was going to see what I see in her. And so Juwayriyah says, I'm actually the chief's daughter. I'm the princess, the Amira of this tribe. And you know what has happened to me, I am now taken a captive. Help me to pay Thabit, help me to pay the ransom. So the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, I can do that. I can pay your ransom and I can let you go. Or I can offer you something better. I can marry you and pay as your dowry your ransom. And there's a reason for this. And so Juwayriyah agrees, she accepts, and she marries the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and her dowry is that she is set free. Now, the tribe is a small tribe. Everyone is related to everyone. And so it became known that you have taken the in-laws of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as captive. You have Juwayriyah's auntie as your captive, Juwayriyah's uncle, Juwayriyah's cousin. And how can you let the in-laws of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam be a slave? And so slowly but surely, the entire tribe of the Banu Mustalik was given up, was set free without any ransom. Meanwhile, Al-Harith, who ran away, the chieftain, he had no idea about any of this. And somewhere along the line, he reclaimed his manhood, and he said, look, I need to go back and free my daughter. The standard price was 100 camels, and he takes 100 of his camels to go to Medina to negotiate Juwayriyah's freedom. And just before he gets to Medina, there are 3 camels, which he sees, oh, these are very nice. He puts them to one side and says, 97 is enough. And so he goes to the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and he says, Ya Muhammad, I've come to ransom my daughter back. And the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam calls Juwayriyah and says, Juwayriyah is not here by force. Basically, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. Your people are set free. Juwayriyah, you are welcome to return home with your father and go back to your tribe. This is called tafweedul talaq. Interestingly, a husband can give the wife the right of talaq. The Nabi is giving her the right of talaq. Juwayriyah, after spending a few weeks with the Nabi Sallam, she says, I would prefer to remain as your wife, if that is what you want. And the Nabi Sallam accepts. Al-Harith is shocked. How is this possible? And he's about to leave when the Nabi says, Oh Harith, what about those 3 camels you have hidden in the desert? And so Al-Harith realizes, I swear that by Allah, you are a prophet. And so the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he converted. And when Al-Harith converted, his tribe converted. And everyone that took anything from the Banu Mustaliq gave it back to them. And the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam reappointed Al-Harith as the chief. And now this entire tribe is a Muslim tribe, and they're allied with the Muslims. And that is why Aisha says, there was no one that brought more benefit to her people than Juwayriyah. So this is another wife of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but through this one marriage, an entire tribe is saved from Jahannam. And this is, as we understand with the daughter of Abu Sufyan, these were political alliances. But nonetheless, Allah chose the best of women. And there's a beautiful narration of Juwayriyah. No, too much about her, but the Nabi spent the night with her, and he got up to go to the Masjied for Fajr, and she was sitting in her musalla, her area. When he comes back, Dhuhr time, she's sitting in the exact same spot. So he said, oh, Juwayriyah, have you been sitting like this the entire morning? She said, yes, making dhikr and ibadah. So he said, let me teach you 4 words, small, that will give you the same reward like sitting the entire morning in ibadah. And this is for all of us. Subhanallah bihamdihi adada khalqihi. Praise be to Allah to the extent of all His creations, equal to all His creations. Wa zinata arshihi, and equal, we praise you Allah, equal to the weight of your throne. Wa midada kalimatihi, and we praise you Allah, equal to the ink in your pen. And we praise you, rida nafsihi, and equal to the magnitude of pleasure you have in yourself. You say these words, these 3 times, it's equal to sitting the entire morning in ibadah. Right. Another event that occurred on the way back. Now, interestingly, who was the head of the munafiqs? Who remembers his name? Abdullah ibn Salul, right? Abdullah ibn Salul is the head of the munafiqs. And they, like we saw in Uhud, they didn't fight, they retreated. But for this battle, they joined up, because this was an easy one. And there was a lot of booty to be had. And so him and a bunch of the munafiqs were actually part of this battle. And on their way back to Medina, there are certain grumblings that's going to happen. So on the way back to Medina, a young boy from the Ansar and a young boy from the Muhajir, they had a bit of an argument, and they got into a fist fight. Yes, young boys go. And during the fist fight, they kicked and punched one another. So each one called, oh Ansar, help me. Oh Muhajirin, help me. And so a group of Sahaba, this on one side and that on one side, begin to get into a fight, to the point where swords are about to be taken out. Look, even most of the Sahaba are human beings. The Nabi ﷺ has to come and intervene. And he says, what is this Jahiliyyah? This Jahiliyyah, one group against the other, this thing is disgusting, this racism. Why are you going back to these old notions of Jahiliyyah? And so the head of the munafiqs, Ibn Salul, who was obviously in the army, he heard about this and he says, you see, it's just a matter of time before the dog that you feed gets big enough to eat you. What does he mean? You've invited the Muhajirin, you fed them, won't be long before they kick us out. And he says, it's about time, and that's what he said, and Allah quotes him in the Quran, يَقُولُونَ لَإِنْ رَجَعْنَا إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ لَيُخْرِجَنَّ الْعَزُّ مِنَ الْأَذَلِ. That when we go back to Medina, the strong of us will kick out the inferior ones, meaning we will kick out these Muhajirin. And he started talking, and how are we going to kick them out and do all of this? One of the youngsters that was a true believer, he said, this is not right, and he goes to inform the Nabi Sallam about Ibn Salul, what he said. And the Nabi Sallam calls Ibn Salul in and said, did you say these things? And he says, well, Allah, I swear by Allah, this guy's a liar, and I've never said, you are Rasul. As in Surah Munafiqeen, وَيَشْهَدُ أَنَّكَ رَسُولٌ, that they swear that you are the Rasul, and Allah knows you are Rasul. So he's making all these oaths and qasams that this is, I have no intention, I'm here with you. And nonetheless, the Nabi Sallam accepts Ibn Salul's testimony, and he rejects the testimony of this young boy. And this young boy is so sad. He said, this was the worst day of my life, because the Nabi Sallam didn't want to accept my word. And so the Nabi Sallam, not as a punishment, but he said, now everyone pack up and we're going to march straight. 20 hours non-stop marching. Why? You keep busy, you don't have time for all these pettiness. And once the army stopped, everyone just fell basically asleep in a coma. And then they woke up the next morning, not really aware of everything, and they went back to Medina. Before they arrived in Medina, the entire Surah Munafiqun in the 28th juz is revealed, where Allah basically confirms everything Ibn Salul had said, and what this boy had said was true. And the Nabi called this boy, and he pulls his ear, and he said, these ears, Allah has confirmed that they heard the truth. Now Umar said, Hala, Ya Rasulullah, alhamdulillah, give me the green light, let me strike the neck of this munafiq. This comes up like 10 times in the seerah, right? Umar is just waiting every time. And the Nabi says, Ya Umar, no, leave him. I don't want the people to say that Muhammad kills his own people, that I slaughter my own inhabitants. I don't want people to say that. Before they're about to enter Medina, Ibn Salul's son, who was a Muslim, he goes to the Nabi Sallam and he said, surely, I've heard this, what's happened. Surely my father is about to be executed. I have no doubt that he deserves to be executed for this. And I'm telling you now, Ya Rasulullah, if you have anyone that executes him, I cannot stand to walk in the same city as my father's executioner. I might just kill this guy. So let me do the job for you. Let me execute my own father. That is the best thing for everyone. So the Nabi said, no, that's not what we want. We will be good to him so long as he's with us. And your job as a son is to be good to him as well. And then his son actually didn't allow him to enter the city. And then he said, Dad, you can now enter the city. And he became known now as the head of the munafiqs. This really hurt. He was burning with rage and anger. And so he did the worst possible thing he could do to hurt the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he would instigate something which would really devastate the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family for a whole month. Do we have time to get into it, or do we wait for tomorrow? We have time for. Right. This is of course the slander of Aisha radiallahu anha. So this also happens on the way back. So on the way back from the Banu Mustalik, Aisha now is also in the army. And Aisha says the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he went on a campaign, and this of course being a very mild campaign, more of a journey, he would allow one of his wives to go with him. They would pull lots. Now I don't know if any of the brothers have more than one wife and you can only afford one holiday. You must basically draw who's going to be the lucky or the unlucky one. And so she was the lucky one to go on this journey. And so she said, we had a long march. Now remember the 20-hour march? Because the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to stop all this nonsense. And so we marched and marched and marched. And then we stopped at a point. Everyone was tired. I basically, and this time it was hijab, the ayat of hijab for the wives of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had to be enclosed in a little box. She couldn't ride in the open. So she was in a little box on the camel. So she goes out to go to the toilet. And somewhere along the line, she loses a necklace. And so she spends a while searching for her necklace. By the time she comes back, the army had picked up and left. Right? So she's completely alone, middle of the desert, enemy territory. And she says, I didn't panic. I realized that, look, eventually they will know I'm not there. Someone's going to notice. And they'll come back where we stopped. And so she just sat on the side of the road, waiting under a tree. And then she said, I fell asleep. And she said, I was sleeping, and the only thing that woke me up was I heard someone says, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That one of the Sahaba who was lagging behind, he also overslept basically. His name was Safwan radiallahu anh, very nobleman. Safwan, known for being a gentleman, being a very honorable man. He comes and he sees Aisha, and he knew what Aisha looked like before the hijab. And so she says, Wallahi, the only exchange we had was him saying, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That's the only thing I heard from him. When I woke up, I covered my face. He turned his back. He let the camel sit. I sat on the camel. And then he walked, and never turning around, and brought me to the army. And so they caught up with the army eventually. But it was so been that even Salul and the Munafiqs were always at the back of the army. They were the first one to see, the Nabi's wife is coming with a strange man into the army like this, in the middle of the night. And so the rumors start to spread, right? There must be some, and subhanAllah, the books of Sirah don't even have we won't even verbalize what that rumor is, but we can all understand the insinuation. Aisha says, I went to Medina, and when I got back to Medina, I became very sick with a fever. Maybe she was also sick that Juwairiya is also now co-wife, but she was basically isolating. So she says, I had a fever, I wasn't feeling well, and I didn't socialize much, so she was at home, and she had not been aware of the rumors that were spreading. A whole month goes by, and she's not really aware of all the talk that is happening. But by now, the rumors are everywhere. Everyone is talking about Safwan and Aisha. Okay? And once she says, so then one day I felt better, and I went out to relieve myself with my auntie. And as we were walking, my auntie was Mistah, right? Her auntie's name is the mother of Mistah. She stumbles and she says, may Mistah be cursed. She curses her own son. So Aisha says, Ya Allah, why would you say that about your son who was a Badri and is a good guy? Why would you curse your own son? So she says, oh, my daughter Aisha, don't you know what Mistah is saying? Mistah is of those who are spreading the rumor about you. So he said, what rumor? The rumor about Safwan. And she said, what is Allah? I can't even believe that there's such something like, are they even conceiving this thing? And she said, I had not realized anything was wrong, except that something seemed off with the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he would come to me, he wasn't as affectionate as he always was. There was some reservation in him. And so she said, I went home, and then the Nabi didn't say anything to her, and she asked, may I go to my parents' house, spend the night there? She wanted to ask Abu Bakr and her mother, Rumman, is this true? And so she went to her parents and asked them, is this true? Is there a rumor like this? And her mother said, yes, there is a rumor like that, but don't worry about it. It's never that a woman that has a happy marriage like you have, except that there is going to be some rumors. And so Aisha could not understand, she could not believe it, and she said, I broke down in tears, crying and crying and crying that entire night. And now she begins to understand what is going on. And to make matters worse, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's not receiving any wahy, any revelation. The rumors are becoming so much that he can't ignore it, that he has to now ask, what is your opinion? And so we know from Aisha that she said, the Nabi asked those closest to him. He asked Usama, like this Zayd adopted son, Usama, the son of Zayd, the adopted son of Nabi. So he's a very close member of the family of Nabi. Usama, what do you say about Aisha? And so Usama said, Ya Rasulullah, we have not seen anything bad about her, and subhanallah, this is clearly a fabrication. And then the Nabi asked Sayyidina Ali, who was also very close, obviously, to the house, what do you think? And Ali said, look, I don't know, I haven't seen anything from her, but, and this is what hurt Aisha, Ali said, Ya Rasulullah, you have no limits in terms of which you can have your choice of women. Why are you so caught up and depressed about this, Aisha? Divorce her. If she is innocent, Allah will forgive her, and you can replace her with someone else. So Aisha, of course, didn't like this. But then Sayyidina Ali said, but if you really want to know about her, ask her maidservant, her lady in the house, her maid, Buraidah. Ask her what she says. And so the Nabi calls this lady in and says, what do you know about Aisha? And she says, Ya Rasulullah, there is nothing I can say about Aisha. The only thing I can say she's guilty of is how naive she is. She would begin to cook some, make some dough for the bread, and then she becomes absent-minded, falls asleep, and the goats eat the bread. That is the only thing that I can say about her. And so the Nabi Sallallahu now, he goes to the mimbar, to the masjid, and he gives a speech. And he says to the Muslims that I have been hurt by a man, and now he doesn't say which man. Of course, everyone knows Ibn Salul. A man who has harmed my family and harmed me. And all of you know that if something happens to this man, why it is going on. And he's accused my family of something evil, and he has hurt me. And he's accused a man, meaning Safwan, a man who we only know of good, has been also accused of a lie. So what do you suggest should happen? So everyone knows who this is. The Ansar stands up, Sa'ad in Mu'ad, again Sa'ad, the man who the arsh would shake when he dies. He stands up and says, Ya Rasulullah, if he's one from my tribe, give me his name and I will execute him myself. And if he's from our tribe of our brothers, the Hazraj, the other tribe of Medina, if he's from them, then give me permission and I will execute him. So the Hazraj, now he is from the Hazraj. Banu Salul, Ibn Salul is from the Hazraj. The Hazraj stood up and Aisha says, they were good people, but their tribalism got the better of them and said, you will never kill one of our own, and you are only saying this Sa'ad because you know it's not from your side, but it was yours. And so a brawl almost breaks out in the masjid. And the Nabi Sallam sits and he calms it down. Aisha said, this was the worst moment of my life, and inshallah we continue tomorrow, bi'idhnillah. We have the time's up. All right, just quickly, Salatul Layl 9:30. The clue for number 2, 7 across, the peace between Muslims and Quraysh. There's going to be a treaty. We're going to talk about it. What is that treaty called? And then today's question, who spread the slander's room of Aisha? What was his name? We mentioned his name a lot. And which of the wives, yesterday's question, was the keeper of the Quran? Obviously, it is Hafsa radiallahu anha. Maymoon, quickly. Throw a prize there quickly. Fidya, 17 Rand. Fitra, 67 or 27 Rand, inshallah. The winner of the quiz, Ali Baker. He's not here? Okay. Rayyan Sali. Yeah, there we go. Rayyan, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.